Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters who are following the Twilight chat. I'm back with another episode of Twilight chat, and today's topic is going to be about the concept of justice. So inshallah we'll explore a few verses of the Quran. We'll ponder upon them and see what we can learn from these verses and what concepts can we extract and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to teach us when it comes to justice. Before then, I would like to tell you a story about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions, or one of his companions. So this story actually is between the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and it's very relevant to the first two verses what we're going to do. So the story that I'm going to tell you is about the Prophet ﷺ and the companion of the Prophet, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is one of the narrators of the Quran, and if it's not for him and the other companions who were very close to the Prophet ﷺ and who memorized the Quran, we wouldn't have the Quran today. So he's one of the greatest scholars of the Sahabas. He is considered to be amongst the greatest scholars of the Sahabas, and he's also considered to be amongst the people who related the Quran to us. So when it comes to what we call the ijaza of the Quran, everyone that claims to have ijaza, they have to come through these companions like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and Ali ibn Abi Talib and others who were known for their memorization of the Quran, and also who were known to have taken the Quran directly from the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ had approved their recitation and their memorization and their relation to him, their relation of the Quran. So the verses that we are actually going to look into, 4 verses of the Quran, the 2 come together and the 2 others are into separate surahs. So the 3 verses are from Surah An-Nisa, and the 4th verse would be from Surah Al-Ma'idah. So the first verse that we're going to look into is verse number 40 and also verse number 41 from Surah An-Nisa. So these 2 are the verses that talk about justice. So the concept of justice and what does it mean to be just, and also how can we relate justice to the Creator. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَظْلِمُ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ وَإِن تَكُ حَسَنَةً يُضَاعِفْهَا وَيُؤْتِ مِن لَدُنْهُ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. So Allah is saying Allah doesn't do injustice, which is a great thing. It's like, if we're going to talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it has to be, when it comes to justice and injustice, justice is absolute when it comes to Allah. As human beings, our understanding of justice is subjective, and there's so many factors that affect us, and that's why when it comes to any judiciary system, you have to have a lot of procedures that a judge needs to follow for them to be just, and when it comes to prosecution, justice courses take a very long time. The prosecution time is very long, and if you look into the court system, is very complicated, and it has to be very complicated. Otherwise, we human beings, we don't know everything. We base our rulings we base them on evidences, and sometimes evidence are not apparent. Sometimes evidence are hard to get to. Sometimes evidence are hard to collect, and if you don't have the evidences, then you risk being unjust. So that's why any justice system, any court procedures takes very long time. That might be frustrating to people. It might be annoying at times, but it is the way, and it should be the way, because if you leave the justice system in a loose, then you risk being unjust. You risk also letting people who should be prosecuted, who are criminals, out. So, and also you risk the fact that you might also persecute people who are innocent. So that's why the fact that the justice system is so complicated comes from the fact that we are unable to uh, reach justice very easily, and we are human beings. We're limited in everything that we do. So that's one of the things. So the verse is saying Allah doesn't do justice, even if it is the weight of an atom. So when it comes to us, we might be unjust, and obviously as human beings, it has to go. We whatever we do, we look at it as like as a minor thing, unless it's a very reasonably noticeable, then we can acknowledge it as a major thing. But Allah is talking about the weight of the atom. The weight of the atom is actually inconsiderable when it comes to our perception of justice. But Allah is just telling us that Allah doesn't do justice, and He gives from His bounties. And then the second verse is just is talking directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the Prophet when he says, فَكَيْفَ إِذَا جِئْنَا بِكَ مِنْ كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ بِشَهِيدٍ وَجِئْنَا بِكَ عَلَى هَؤُلَاءِ شَهِيدًا. And how will it be when we bring witnesses from every nation, every ummah, every person, every nation that was before you, and we bring you as an evidence as well, as a witness to your ummah. And if we're gonna go back to the story that I was telling you, this story is about Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet was sat, and he asked the Abdullah ibn Mas'ud to recite the Quran for him, and he says, "O Prophet of Allah, how am I going to recite it to you when it has been revealed, to you, not to me? So I'm not the Prophet." Basically, that's what he's saying. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he's saying, "You are the Prophet, and you're asking me to recite the Quran. You should be reciting it, to us, not us, not the other way around." But he says, "I like to hear it from others." And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud started reciting, and when he reached this verse, فَكَيْفَ إِذَا جِئْنَا مِنْ كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ بِشَهِيدٍ, the Prophet ﷺ was crying, actually literally crying, because this is addressing him as a prophet. Like when you come as a witness. So I just wanted to tell this story as part of how the Prophet ﷺ was dealing with his companions. It's not just like asking them to, just telling them whatever to do whatever he's saying, but in a friendly, brotherly manner, where he's asking them to, to recite the Quran. He's listening to what the recitation is. So just like a one-to-one interaction. And this is one of the qualities of leadership that we can learn from this interaction, from this story. So if someone is a leader, then their interaction with others should be normal. It shouldn't be hierarchical, where they're just telling people. It should rather be a friendly, brotherly, sisterly approach that we should have to leadership, also in a very humane manner, rather than very rigid manner where humanity or the humane side is lost in between. So having spoken about justice and that Allah is doesn't do injustice, there are two verses that I would like to share with you as well. That's verse number 135 and from Surah An-Nisa, and verse number 8 from Surah Al-Ma'idah. These two verses are actually talking about justice when it comes to us and being a witness to something and then coming to the court. So these two verses, they have similar approach to justice. They one of them is to do with justice against people whom you don't like, whom you might have hatred towards, and the other one is justice against people whom you like, you love, you related to, you have direct interest with them. So the first verse which talks about justice is verse number 135 from Surah An-Nisa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist shuhada lillah. Or you who believed, be persistently standing firm in justice. So you are standing in justice regardless who the justice is against. You are firmly standing for justice. And then even if it's against you, so that's كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم. Even if it's against you, even if it's against your parents, even if it is against your relatives. ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين أو الأقربين إن يكون فقراء إن يكون غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما. Regardless, even if they're poor or they're rich. So richness or poverty or being close to you, relative, nafs, or the parents, it shouldn't play a big role when it comes to justice. So all we have to do is, when it comes to justice, regardless, we have to look into things from the same lens, regardless of who the justice is being served against or for. So it's not the person, it's the idea of justice being served. And we have to admit that's very difficult. If you see someone who is closer, to you, like your parent or your relative, behind the bars, in a courtroom, then obviously you would, as a human being, you would feel sorry, and that might lead to you not being honest if you've been asked, to give your testimony. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just calling upon the people, the mu'min, and he's saying, Kunu qawwamina bil qist, to stand firm persistently, regardless of the person, regardless of the issue. And being poor or rich or related to you shouldn't play a big role in whatever you say. You have to be just. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends this ayah by saying, and Allah is ever knowing, ever acquainted with whatever you do or you say. So the other verse that I wanted to bring to the concept of justice as well is verse number 8 from Surah Al-Ma'idah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina lillah. So when it comes to people who, who are related to us, when it comes to people who with whom we have interest, Allah is asking us to stand firmly for justice or injustice. And when it comes to people whom we hate, the way that the ask becomes, the demand becomes different. You have to stand for Allah. So because these people are not related to you, or these people you hate them, or you don't like them, or they might be your enemy, then it's easier to just witness against them. For the first people, you could witness for them because you like them, because you're related to them, because there's interest. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us to be, to be persistent in serving justice. But here He's asking us to stand for Allah, not for justice, for Allah first. Be persistently standing for Allah. Kunu qawwamina lillah. And then He asks, so the priority comes, Allah becomes the priority, not the justice. Because here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because here it's easy to just say whatever, so that these people are persecuted, these people are, not being served justly because you don't like that person. But now, if your priority is Allah, what happens is you have to overcome your ego, your nafs, and witness for the people, witness for justice, because the first thing that you need to have, to that should be present in your mind is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, is seeing you, and he knows what the just is and what happened, then because you acknowledge the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is witness upon you, then you're not gonna lie, or you're not gonna be unjust, because you are already in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you are in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're not gonna lie, because Allah knows what's within you without even you saying it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows whatever's happened. So that's the difference. And the ask is just to be, because we already know for the first eye, we already know the person, we already know the people, we have interest in them, not being persecuted. Then is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to stand for justice, and then we should be witness for Allah. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us to stand firm for Allah, because Allah likes justice. Allah orders us to be just. And then he says, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. And hatred of the others, hatred of people, shouldn't make you be unjust. Because when you don't like someone, it's easy to become unjust. And then he says, اعْدِلُوا, be just, as that is the closest to righteousness, as that is the nearer to righteousness. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. And the same ending with the other one, with slight difference in the way the words are phrased, but it's the same meaning. Allah is ever knowing, ever acquainted with whatever you say or do. So, brothers and sisters who are following this Twilight chat, this was a quick chat about the concept of justice. Obviously, the concept of justice is bigger than this, and it needs we can talk about this, for quite a long time. But I just wanted to introduce this concept, because we are taking things as concepts, and we spoke about more than one concept, one of them being justice and one of them being guidance, and today we spoke about justice as a way, as one of the concepts that we should have in our lives, and we should be aware of what we're doing, especially when it comes to justice against the others who are related to us, or the others who are considered to be our enemies. So you have to be just with everyone, regardless of whether that everyone falls within your circle. It could be within the circle of enemies, or it could be within the circle of beloved ones. So that shouldn't play a big role in you trying to in you being just. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering us to be just. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adl. It's actually a command. You have been commanded to be just, regardless of the person. So, brothers and sisters, this was just a quick chat about justice and the concept of justice and how we should be approaching it, and what are the things that we should acknowledge when it comes to justice. And if you have any questions, if you have anything to add to this, you can post them over here. Just to recap quickly, the verses that we've spoken about today is verse number 40 and 41 from Surah An-Nisa, and also number 135. So 4 verses, and we compare the last two because they are very related to each other, but they have different target groups. So the first verse talks about the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being just and doesn't do injustice. إن الله لا يظلم مثقال ذرة وإن تك حسنة يضاعفها ويؤتي من لدنه أجرا عظيما. And the other one is فكيف إذا جئنا من كل أمة بشهيد وجئنا بك على هؤلاء شهيدا, which is the next verse to it. So verses 40 and 41, and I related the story of the Prophet and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud to make it relevant to how the Prophet ﷺ was dealing with his companions and the relationship that he had with his companions. It wasn't a relationship about prophet and the companions. Just it was also a relationship about a brotherly, friendly relationship, and that is something that we need to learn from. For a leadership uh, trait or merit that we can learn. Being a leader, it doesn't mean that you have to deal with people in a very hierarchical form, rather in a very friendly form where things flow smoothly and you are teaching and telling people without being harsh, without being without treating them as secondary, but just normal human beings who are acquainted to you, who are closer to you, who are your friends, and you can lead, teach, and also guide people if you're in a leadership position without being harsh or without and there are other qualities that we can learn from the leadership of the Prophet ﷺ, but this is not the place to talk about it. But just like because the story, I related the story, I just wanted to um, also highlight what's within the story apart from just telling the story itself. The second section that I spoke about is about the two verses of the Quran, which is verse number 135 and verse number 8 of Surah An-Nisa and verse number 8 of Surah Al-Ma'idah. They're very related. The first one talks about justice when it comes to people who are related to us, people with whom we might have some interest. So ourselves, our relatives, our parents. So these are the people that we actually try to hide for. We would try to make them avoid justice if possible. So and the command is just like not to do that, but to be fair and witness, not to follow our inclinations. And the second verse is verse number 8 from Surah Al-Ma'idah, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about justice against people whom we don't like. So when it comes to people whom we not related to, we don't love, we don't like, whatever you want to call it, we have to be just. And the two ways that the verses start with is just like when it comes to the people who are related to us, the verse Allah is actually asking us to stand for justice. كونوا قوامين بالقسط. Persistently standing for justice, injustice, be just. But when it comes to the people whom we hate, primarily it's not about, so this is another way of discipline. So it's not about justice as a primary, but it's about Allah, and then serve justice because you are in the presence of Allah. كونوا قوامين لله. Be persistently standing for Allah. So when you are being just to your enemy, to someone that you don't like, it's not because they deserve your mercy, but because you are standing for Allah, because you're standing for the greatest, you're standing for the Almighty, not for that person. That person might be a bad person in real life, and you don't like them not because you just like, you don't like this, there's something within them, but because they're not good. But when it comes to justice, when you have to be honest, regardless if you like them or you don't like them. So, and then you being honest or you being, just to them, you're standing persistently for Allah, and then as a result of you stand for Allah, you are actually being just to them. So these are the things that I just reflect upon, and it was a quick video about a quick chat about justice and these verses of the Quran, the concept of justice as a whole, and how can we apply that to our lives on a daily basis, and also when it comes to incidents and issues that we face in life, that would include incidents within our relatives and our parents and our families and our kids, if we have any, and also how to discipline ourselves, our behavior. It's about disciplining your behavior, yourself, and how to overcome the ego that is within us. So I'm just sharing these concepts because it's something that I reflect upon and I wanted to share with you. And it might not have a great knowledge for you, you might not have benefit from it, but I hope that you have benefit from it. If you have any extra things that you'd like to share with us, you just write them in the comment section below, and we discuss them, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. I'm sorry it was a bit long, but I hope that was beneficial for everyone who's listening to it. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.